Well, welcome back, friends, to Build a Lot Acres. In today's episode, we're going to be talking all about IBC containers and why you might want to get some. Let's get into it. So let me start off with some of the basics about them, and then we'll get into why they may be beneficial to you in your wood yard. So what is an IBC container? So it's an intermediate bulk container that's commonly used to transport liquids. It could be cooking oils, it could be industrial liquids, it could be fertilizer, dyes for like mulch. It could be a number of different things that they transport. So inside the cages, you're gonna find these plastic bladders, and these are what is gonna obviously hold the liquids inside. All right, so they come in two basic sizes. They come in 330 gallon and 275. The only real difference being the 330 gallon versions are about 6 inches taller. So they both have a similar footprint of about 40 inches by 48 inches. And the 330s are going to be 4.5 feet tall or 54 inches, whereas the 275s are going to be about 48 inches tall. So some of the things I've seen them used for, obviously a lot of people use them for firewood. That's one of the biggest uses. But I've also seen them used for rainwater collectors, water storage. I've seen them used for brush fire, putting out brush fires in the woods on like a trailer. I've seen people use them for different irrigation things. I've actually seen people use them for like homemade septic systems for camps. I've seen people use them for hunting blinds, for animal enclosures, for like farm animals. So there's a lot of different things you can do with these containers. They come in really handy. They're rated at like 1,500 kilograms, which is 2.2 pounds in a kilogram. So it's well over 3,000 pounds. So even stuff full of the heaviest firewoods, they're really heavy duty built.
We actually also used, we cut part of one of the bladders and made a little kiddie pool for our dog during the summer because she really likes water.
Yeah.
So Willow really enjoyed that, but there's just a lot of things that you can use them for.
And a lot of people actually take the bladders, cut them in half diagonally, and they make nice little roofs for these firewood cages, which is what we do here. So some other basic facts. If you're curious how many cubic feet it would hold or how many cords, so if you do the math, there's 7.48 gallons in a cubic foot. So the 330 gallons should be about 44 cubic feet, which is just over a third of a cord. And the 275s, I believe, comes out to like 36 cubic feet, which is a little short of a third of a cord. But they hold roughly a third of a full cord per container. So the nice things are they actually have built-in plastic pallets usually in the bottom, so they don't absorb water like a wood pallet would, and they rot out quickly. These last a long time. So in order to get the wood in them, you got to cut out a hole to get in there, unless you have 5-foot long arms, which most of us don't have. A lot of people I'll see cut out completely so the top is not connected. I like to leave the top connected and just put a hole. It's stronger, I think, and then you can stack them, because you can actually stack these 2 or 3 high depending on how high your tractor will lift and the weight capacity of your loader. My Coyote will easily stack 2 high. I could do 3 if I could just lift up about another 4 inches, but I just miss it because these are the taller 330 gallon containers. So let's get into some of the benefits and some of the negatives. So I would say the first positive is going to be you can stack the wood much higher than you can in a conventional stack like this. I've stacked a lot of wood over the years, and in an open stack like this with cribbed ends, you're going to get to a certain height and it's going to want to be much more tippy as you go up. So 5 to 6 feet is really as high as I typically will go in my open stacks. Whereas with the IBC containers, you can stack it much higher, 2 high, 3 high, depending on what your machine will lift. Like I said, my machine, I can stack 2 330s or 3 275s with my Coyote, which picks up about 9 feet. So you can see you get a lot more height and you get a lot more wood per square foot with the cages than you can with open stacks. And if you're wondering how stable it is, I can assure you it's quite stable. I bet you even 3 high, you could still stand on top of it because it has a pretty big footprint and there's a lot of weight holding them down. So another big benefit to the IBC containers is they're really easier to move, and that's going to be handy for a number of reasons. It's going to be less times you're going to touch your wood. So for example, I'll split the wood and go right from the splitter into these cages, and then I'm done until I need the wood for the winter. Whereas the open stacks, you're gonna put it from the splitter into a bucket or trailer or truck or whatever, stack it, and then when you need it in the winter, you're gonna go back and put it back in the trailer or truck or whatever, and then drive it to your house. So it's much less handling, and you might wanna move these cages. Let's say you're building a barn, or maybe you need to expand your lawn, and for some reason you need to move your wood. If it's in an open stack, that's a lot of extra work that you're gonna have to do. Whereas these cages, it's easy to move them with a set of forks in your tractor. You might even want to move it to a sunnier spot to season quicker. Like I said, there's a number of reasons that you might want to move your wood, and it makes it much easier to move it when it's in these IBC containers. Another positive, I think, on these containers is it's much easier to separate your wood by species. You know, you might be a specialty wood person that sells to a lot of barbecue places or places that do smoking, or maybe your customers want a certain type of wood, so it's easy to separate different types of wood in these containers versus having them in a big open stack where they tend to get mixed together. So another positive is these short pieces, sometimes they're called chunks, uglies, cookies, whatever you want to call them. You know, these can be hard to stack in open stacks because they don't stack well in uniform. Whereas these cages hold them nice. A lot of people build bins for these pieces. Now, most firewood sellers aren't going to sell these pieces, but I don't sell firewood, I just do it for myself. And I burn everything that I cut. And these make nice containers to hold these odd shaped and short pieces. So the last positive I'm going to talk about is actually one I don't see discussed very often on videos or in forums or anywhere, but it's going to sound weird, but it's mentally tricks you when you split right into these containers. The reason I say that is when you're looking at a huge empty open stack area and you start filling it, it can seem daunting because you have this huge area you're going to fill up. And it kind of, I don't want to say overwhelms you, but it's mentally, you know, it seems like a lot. Whereas one of these, you might only have 2 or 3 hours after work to fill these up. You know, let's say you work a regular full-time job and then you do firewood on the side, or you're doing your own wood. So you might only have a couple hours of daylight left. And you can make a goal for yourself to fill 1, 2, 3 of these containers, which is, you know, a third of a quart each. So they fill up fast, and it can kind of, you know, keep you motivated. So it can kind of play mental games with you and keep you more positive regarding your wood splitting. So I've made it seem pretty glamorous so far owning these cages, and to be honest, I do think they're probably a good way to go if you have a tractor already with forks. But there are some negatives to consider as well, so let's talk about those. Now I think the first negative is going to be the bladders. Depending on what was in your container, it could have been a toxic chemical, could have been a dye. It might be something that's hard to wash out and you don't really want on your property. So disposing of the bladders, if you're not going to reuse them, can be a negative to having these cages. You can also buy the cages, just the cages. But keep in mind, if you want to buy clean bladders, like stuff that had cooking oil in it, typically they're going to run more money. Which is going to lead us into our next negative, which is cost. Like I said, if you buy cages that are food grade, they call them, you're going to spend more money for your cages. I've seen them as expensive as $100 or $200 per cage in some cases. Whereas usually for the ones that aren't food grade, you can get them much cheaper. Sometimes free, sometimes $20 to $30 a cage. I bought these cages all at once. I'll post up some pictures of when me and my brother went and got them. I got 20 of these 330-gallon containers.
How many did
Yeah.
he get?
He got 4 of the 275s because his tractor's a little smaller. But the reason I got 20 is the guy I bought them from offered a break. The more you bought, the cheaper they were. So for 20 plus, it was only $20 a container. If you got 1, it was 50, and if you got 5 or more, it was 35. So it was well worth it to me to get the 20 and save, you know, quite a bit of money and have more cages at the end of the day, because that's what I wanted.
You split a lot of wood.
So
The more wood you split, the more cages, the better. And if you can get them for cheaper with more, then it just makes sense.
So another negative that I think I should mention is these can be harder to get the wood in and out of. Now, depending on how big you cut your opening, that's going to change that. A lot of people, like I said, cut the top out I've seen people pretty much cut out one whole side. It's easy to get the wood in, but it makes it much weaker. So I like to keep the hole, you know, as small as possible while maintaining the structural integrity of the cage. So for someone like Clara, for instance, it's easy to get inside, put the wood in, do what she needs to do. But someone like me, I'm much bigger, you know, it's kind of hard, awkward to get in there. So some of the things I found to combat that is you can fit the wood in from the holes, because these holes are plenty big enough to get your wood in. Once you get stacked to a certain height, you can just do it from the top and reach the top half roughly of the cage. But that can be considered a negative, is the size of the hole. It's obviously tougher to stack in there versus the open stacks. Another thing I found that makes it much easier is if you pick this up in your tractor forks while it's empty and you split it right from the splitter into here, if you have the bottom starting off here, it's much easier to get in than trying to crouch down and having this cage resting in the ground. So I recommend picking it up to a good height and then filling the cage from whatever height your tractor picks it up to that you want. So I think the last, negative we're going to talk about, you could consider a negative, you could not, depends how you look at it. You do need, obviously, a machine to move them. I say that, you could just use them, you could just keep them in the same spot and fill them with wood, but that seems kind of counterproductive in my opinion. So you do need a good sized tractor or a skid steer or a backhoe or something that has forks on it so you can move these around, because they do get heavy. Full of wood, these can be 2,000 pounds plus, depending on the type of wood and how seasoned it is. The wetter it is, obviously it's gonna be heavier. So you do need a tractor or something to move these around, which you could consider a negative. So I think that's going to be it on today's video regarding these IBC containers. I hope it's given you some food for thought, and maybe it will make you realize whether or not they're right for you. Thanks for watching. We appreciate it. And if you like our videos, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you in the next time.
Have a great day.